Okay, so welcome, guys. I want to introduce, first of all, in my screen, I can see Jason Besters from Integrated Martial Arts in Barrel. He came up and was an attacker for the event and is a highly experienced martial artist. And the second person, Alex, needs no introduction. He is one of the best attackers that you'll find the world over. He's versatile. He's plays a lot of different roles, and he's the mad one that, this was kind of named after, the one saying "knock me out." So welcome, guys, and thanks for joining me.
Hey, Jeff, thank you for having on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so first of all, Shank Tank, like while the credits and whatnot are playing, we'll just discuss that a little bit. So the thing about Shank Tank and these events that have weapons is it's really tough to get a conclusive result. Really difficult, because you can argue, that stab would have hit here or no, it wouldn't. And you know what? There's people that have been stabbed like 30, 40 times and lived through it and fought through it, So, and then there's other people, like I've got videos where people just get nicked with a knife and it's game over. They die. So it is so inconclusive. It is so hard to judge that, I think almost 90% of these could have been disputed, like if I'm honest, because, it's just so difficult. And that's the thing. And when you add the pen into it as well, it just adds that other level of complexity that made it really tough on us judges. And one thing, in hindsight, there are mistakes that have been made and things like that. But we didn't have access to all these camera angles. We had our little panel there, and the majority of the decisions were unanimous, particularly the controversial ones. And so, one thing to remember is that we're doing our best. This is season 2. I think we've come a long way from season 1. But even so, like, there's other complications that you see. So, yeah, we just do what we can, And Jason, do you want to shed some light on the instructions you were given as an attacker? Like, what were the instructions that I gave you? Same with you, Alex, if you've got anything to say.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, look, just to add to that, we're all just the attackers, I should say. We're just volunteers that, got involved and or invited to be involved by Jeff. From an attacker perspective, my understanding was I was going to get in there, tag the other person with the wooden training knife with the red paint on it, tag him as many times as I could and try and make it as realistic as possible, like an aggressive attacker. And basically I was going to stop if the whistle was blown by the judge or referee on the outside of the cage, or if I felt a shot that was significant enough to knock me, that was impactful, that would have represented a knockout type strike. So yeah, that was my understanding of me as an attacker.
Yeah. Have you got anything to add, Alex?
No, very much the same as Jason there with what I was told and how I approached it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so all these drills we do, whether you're an attacker or on the receiving end, I sort of highlight that the shot that lands has to be significant enough to make the person stop. And, that was told to the participants as well. And the interesting thing, and this is where it's difficult as well, is if you look at the previous episode or the previous 2 episodes, and my 10-year-old daughter pointed this out to me. She said that Natan started off slow and then upped the intensity. Jeff started up intense and then dropped the intensity. So, like, it's really hard, I guess, across the board for people to get that right, And the other thing is, too, from an attacker's perspective, is I don't want it to look like point karate. We've had in the past, like with other Krav Maga schools, back when we were a Krav Maga school, we did this one day and, we're doing all these drills. And I remember one of our big guys, Paul, was throwing this guy around, gets him on the ground, pins him, and that guy just rakes his hands like that across his face and goes, "Got your eyes, game over, fights." And that's what we want to try and avoid. We don't want it to look like point karate. We don't want it to look like, oh, this just clipped me, oh, it's game over. We'd rather raise the bar and push people further, So it's a fine line. It's tough to enforce and it's tough. Everyone's interpretation of it's different, as is people's ability to be able to take shots. Watch boxing fights. There's people that get clipped on the jaw and they're out. There's people that you could hit in the jaw as hard as you can several times. Like, look at the Mark Hunt Ray Sefo fight where they drop their hands and just pop their chins up and go to town on them. So, like, to try and factor all this in to make it realistic is really difficult. And we do our best. There are no, I guess we're not biased against anyone, in spite of, some of the comments people going, we're a bit easier on Craig. It's not the case at all. It was somewhat standard across the board, but even watching it in hindsight, I can see where there's discrepancies and things like that. And, if there are any mistakes, like as I'm refereeing here, for this one, this was one that caused a little controversy. This was Jason's one with Jeff. And is that the one? No, this is Jason with Jeff. Now, the controversy was this head kick. Now, if I pause that right there, I am like standing somewhere behind that box, the plyometric, SMI plyometric box, because I'm trying to get out of the way of it. Now, if you look at the angle that I'm at, I can't see the way the kick, like, how it landed and all the rest of it. And, Jason, do you want to tell me your thoughts on it? Because you're the guy on the firing line to some extent, I guess. We both are, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Look, like I said, and I think I've mentioned to you previously before, Jeff, that I've actually done a lot of fighting in those type of headgear. I've been knocked out before in that headgear, and I've knocked other people out. So I know what a hard knock is. And I think in this particular case, I just put on the role of a crazy person who just charges in. And, I think I yelled or roared as I charged in. I did not feel that kick to an extent that would make me raise my hand and say I got knocked. So I just continued on as part of the contest and charged on through. I've also read some of the commentary, and look, I've analysed it myself, and to the best of my ability, I'm comfortable with my decision to move forward through and keep on going. And if you want to spend the time to analyse it frame by frame, you can, but there's actually 3 points of contact in there. There's my parry hand, there's the hand with the knife, and that's actually touching the inside of the leg, and also my head. So, yeah, I'm not saying he didn't kick me. He definitely kicked me. Would have knocked me out on the street, potentially. But in the moment of that contest and that game on that day, I didn't get knocked enough to stop, so I kept charging through. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, and that's it. And, Jeff probably did pull the kick. I'm not disputing any of that. I'm sitting on the fence here because, like I said before, it's all inconclusive. It's so hard to decide. And if we made a mistake, I'm sorry. Either way, but it's just, like I said, it's so difficult to do. But
definitely yeah. Difficult to do. And like Alex said, everyone's just doing the best they can as attackers. We're trying to be as realistic as we can. Provide some really good resistance. And, it's still within the constraints of safety. We've got safety equipment.
Yeah.
We've got referees, we've got people to stop, help us stop. And, and we had those simple instructions. If you get a decent shot, pull up. If you don't, continue. Everyone takes the shot differently, like you've already alluded to, Jeff. One thing I will say about those masks or those helmets, they are primarily to stop cuts and abrasions. Yes, it's got a Perspex bubble, so it's going to stop you from potentially getting a broken nose if the mask is tight. However, it doesn't actually stop concussive type power going through the head. So you can still get rocked, you can still get dazzled. And then that didn't happen in that particular instance.
Yeah. And it is a necessary evil, the thing, and the padding and the helmets. And I kind of dropped the ball in there a little bit as well, in that I gave all the attackers protective equipment and said, here, wear this. And so I was, at the time, distracted. I didn't see people coming in with the wrong helmet. Now they're fixed up. Adam's got the right one now, which sort of changed it a little bit. It changed probably the motivation of some of the attackers to go to the face. And it was, I dropped the ball on that one because I was keeping an eye on, MJ was putting knife on the paint. She probably put a little bit too much on. I was trying to monitor that. I was monitoring, the peanut gallery. I was also trying to keep people away from the fighters because they were in another room warming up and getting ready, and there were like people fanboying them, and we're trying to sort of let them get in the right headspace. On top of that, there were people wandering around this facility, and I've got thousands upon thousands of dollars through this facility, and you know what? Some things went missing. a lot of things went missing. I'll pause that there. And so I was just distracted, at the time. I should have stopped, and maybe, the role of the referee moving forward is to, like in the UFC, check people down that they're wearing the right equipment, because, quite often people, don't follow the script as such and do their own thing. And yeah, it's a bit disappointing, but it is what it is. And I'll take full responsibility for that. And moving forward, it's something to address and ensure. But this was, the other thing too, if you look here, Adam on a couple of occasions, stopped and went like that, like he did on a few occasions, and was like, yep, that was a good enough kick. And, people were trying to do that. People made that effort to do that. You did that with the stab from Jesse as well. But, this was a really cool moment where Ranton, not so much this exchange, but the ones prior where, he snapped out of that little mindset that he was in, and now he turned it on. So he was rant on this time, not rant off, as he said. And he did really well. Like, those shots that he landed were big. Oh, big, strong hits, like, he was dropping bombs, and everyone was proud of him in that moment. It was a really cool moment. It was good to see. And, at the end of the day, this is what I want to see. I want to see personal growth from competitors. I want to benefit out of this as much as they can, whether it be learning about knife defense, whether it be honing their skills, or just getting financial gain or success, or whatever it is you're after, popularity. That's what it's about. And it's interesting too, because we've studied this knife defense like for a long time. We've done it to the nth degree, probably more than anyone that I know. And in the comments, you hear people going, oh, you got to isolate the knife hand, you got to do this, got to do that. It's easier said than done. Like, I had an argument with a knife expert online once who was saying, that my guys aren't good at controlling the weapon-bearing limb. But so is everyone that's gone in a prior, and you got some quality wrestlers and grapplers and things like that added as well. When people actually try to stab you and aren't playing, good attacker sort of thing, it doesn't work out that way. It's easier said than done. And if people are sitting on the sidelines going, oh, you're not good at this, that's a good indicator to me that they've never taken it to that level. Because I've spoke to people that have done all these training courses in knives that are supposed to be the bee's knees and whatever. And I go, oh, do they take it to this level? No, not even close. It's like not even 50% of that. And so if you dial back the intensity, it's not real. Like, even this, it's dialed back to a certain extent, and it takes away the realism from it. But, when you're juggling safety and things, this is probably as far as I go with the equipment that we have. It's not as easy as people think. So you guys got anything to add to that?
Oh, it's definitely difficult. I've had the privilege of being on the defender side as well, not obviously as part of the show, but another time at your training centre, I had a go, and I was trying to defend. I think I did it 3 times in a row and convincingly died 3 times. It's really not easy to defend, and I think that if anything, if people get anything out of this, I think that's the key. Is that obviously you want to avoid any sort of attack with a weapon if at all possible. That number one is avoidance, and stay the heck out of there. From my perspective, if you end up in a worst case scenario, and obviously these guys are in the worst as far as being trapped in a room they can't get out, then you would utilize something between you and them, a chair or something. One of the rounds is those big blocks were there. Some people, I think, online were asking, what was that about? That was to give people an opportunity to put something between them and the attacker. And some used it really well, and some ignored it and just went in for the fight, And that shows the different mentality, the different thoughts in the moment, right? In a real knife fight, you're only going to get one chance at it, and you might make the wrong decision. There's no guarantees, and it truly does not. There's some really good fighters that would die if there was a knife attack. And I'm putting myself in that as well. I've been training personally. I've probably 7 years ago is when I started to specifically hone in on combatives and knife defense and more realistic street self-defense. And that was a big eye-opener, because some of the things I'd previously done were great for in a ring or in a tournament, or in a rule-bound environment. As soon as you step into something that's and you start pressure testing like you've been perfecting over time, Jeff, it opens more. Your brain does a backflip and go, wait a minute, it's a lot harder than I thought. Now, I do agree that you've got to start somewhere, right? You've got to understand the
100%.
basic principles. You've got to start in that cooperative drill type arrangement. And then hopefully with the right instruction, you slowly build the pressure until it's under more realistic setting.
Yeah. And it's demoralizing. You know, I think the first time we did shank tank was probably 12 years ago. And you know what, that back at that stage, we were still a Krav Maga school that was doing the 360 simultaneous block and counter and all the rest of it. And we trained that hard and trained it well and did so much repetition of it. But then when we jumped in the shank tank, it didn't come out. And that's what made me start to think about, well, hang on a sec, if these principles aren't coming out here, and it's easy to sit there and look and go, oh, you're not training it hard enough, but there's something going on. There's some missing link that's stopping them come out. Perhaps it's the techniques themselves. And that's where we started that exploration and we changed what we did. And it was, I guess, somewhat similar to Rokus's journey, where he was an Aikido practitioner, realized it's not the best thing and changed. Like we did the exact same thing with that and sort of sought other options and things. And it's always a work in progress. It's organic, and there's not too many people in the world. You know, I could probably count on one hand the ones that do it in a fashion that I sort of would rate. It's tough. It's really difficult. And if you want to get better, you gotta do that. It's just plain and simple. Otherwise, it's the difference between, I liken it to touch football and tackle football. You know, you do all those drills in the gym, that's touch football. Now it becomes tackle. You soon see the people that are good at touch football it doesn't come across. Like, you've got to have that physicality, has to be chosen at that level, because your thought process, the psychology behind it, everything changes. And, you know, it's this setting is a little bit easier because they know what's coming. But in real life, when it's the last thing that you're expecting, I know a couple of times, and I've been in these situations and a knife's come out to play or whatever, it's a shock to the system. There's that whole time of processing and working out, shit, what's going on here? And then you basically instantly you got to come up with a strategy, or you go into, I guess, autopilot, and the training should kick in, but quite often the things we were doing wouldn't kick in. So it's a tough one. It's really tough. And that's like this, Jordan's strategy here. The first time I saw that was by Alex, actually, believe it or not. Alex did the exact same thing a number of years ago. Do you want to tell us about your experiences dropping to your back? I guess pulling guards.
Going back a while, it was like pre-COVID, but no, I was at the mindset of trying to keep all my main arteries as far away as possible, but it does work. But then you forget about the if you get gashed on the inside of your thighs, or even if you're just to get a slit across your hamstring, your legs are going to be rendered useless. There's obviously in a more of a real life kind of situation, there's obviously not going to be a time limit. There's not going to be you're going to be surviving more than 20 seconds. So you're either going to bleed out if you're getting gashed on your legs or whatnot. I've done it for the sake of it. I thought it was great and fun at the time, but would I do it again? Probably not. But good on Jordan for playing the game. I guess he did it well. He knew the time perimeter he had to survive for, and whatnot, and because of that, he got a few. I think about half of his. He came out unscathed in about half of them, or
he
got
he
the
did
green
well.
light on about half of them. So good on him.
He finished second. And the other thing to consider as well is if you got boots on, let's say you're riding a motorbike and you got like leather pants and a boot on, it protects you to some extent. And for the game, it's a really ingenious thing because you're keeping your vitals, or the majority of them, away. But we had an osteopath and a paramedic on hand to watch and give their perception of it. And they were just saying, those slashes across the hamstring and various other places, your Achilles or whatever, you'll lose use of that leg, those muscles to some extent. And not to mention the psychology of it. Once you start bleeding, you bleed profusely from your hamstring. There's that psychological component as well. It becomes slippery. And again, it's so inconclusive because if you look at, people are talking about the femoral artery, and the femoral artery is probably about as big as this pen, right? So, like to get that slash, if you talk about, I don't want to be inappropriate about suicide, people say about going across the street or down the street. If you're going down the street, like to try, it's not as easy to hit it. Across the street, there's a chance you can. But even there, if the angle of their leg changes slightly, you can't tell. The only way you can get, a true representation is to do this in reality. And, obviously we're not going to do that. But I think the first example of this is probably the best one. That's when he went up against Adam, because number one, he wasn't expecting it. And Adam got confused by it. Like in my head, I'm sitting there thinking, cut his legs, cut his legs. And Adam was like problem solving and trying to get around and go to the body for the sake of the game. And I think this is probably a truer representation than the other ones because, like, I guess we're more unprepared, but you look straight away, he's got that big slash on his hamstring as well already. Would an attacker be like everyone else and come in with a game plan? Only a trained person, a heavily trained person in MMA or wrestling or whatever, knows how to clear the legs and pass the guard from that standing position. The average Joe, maybe not. So it might work on them. I'm not saying yes or no on any of these in either way. All I'm saying is maybe, possibly. So good on him for doing this strategy. And I'm sure it's going to blow up because, people are going to argue back and forth. You can't please everyone. If you are pleasing everyone, you're doing something wrong because you're not taking a stance either way. But even here, like Jason's covering up quite well in this attack. Would the average junkie that's trying to, mug him, stab him or whatever, do the same? Probably not. So this is where the argument people are going, bringing people from the outside that aren't trained to be attackers has some validity. But then by the same token, we probably have more of those attackers going to hospital than our guys because like Jason's doing now, he's covering up, he's protecting himself. We know how to do this in a manner to protect ourselves to some extent. So, again, tough. They're all tough calls, all of them, each and every one.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. And it was funny in that instant because once he took me down, then I had to employ an open guard type arrangement and we're sort of battling back and forth, except I've still got the knife in that case. But that sort of saved me from him getting in close to smash me. So it's sort of reversed. But I think you've got more of an advantage when you don't have the weapon.
Yeah.
You got more of an advantage if you've got the weapon in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one thing as well, where sport martial arts, where you got to tweak them to make them practical for knives and things, a lot of underhooks and things you do. Your hand has to come down below the elbow to pin and stop this action happening. Because even though you might have a pin, if they still have that much movement, they can still generate a bit of force in those stabs. Now, this one I'll talk about, it's controversial because, people with pens to the head, Jesse's one was counted as a win. A knife to the head would do a lot more damage than a pen to the head, no doubt. But the reason I suggested that this was a loss was the only thing that was visible to George when he was standing behind the boxes was his head. And George was aiming for the top of his head so as not to get him in the eyes and things like that. So I'm not saying it was a disqualification, but that played a role. Like it limited the attack and sort of hindered the attacker to some extent. So it was a combination of the two. It was a combination of a disqualification and also George moved that around so it was not to hit him in the eye and stuff. So, and, all the arguments and comments, you'll notice that Aaron's not attacking Jordan here. So this isn't the order that it went in. George attacked him twice. So Aaron was already out of the equation by this point. So again, in terms of people on the internet criticizing whatever, go and try it and come up with your own conclusions. There are ways you can make it work. There are ways that it might hinder you. Go and test it out. It's easy to sit there behind a keyboard saying, oh, all you have to do is this, all you have to do is that. Go and try it. Go and do it. Speak from a position of, I guess, power by knowing. And here, that's what I was saying, like my daughter said, Natan started out slow and now he's up the tempo. So yeah, it's this is very interesting. And this goes, and this is where I'm going to pay homage to the attackers. You guys just jumped in there so many times and don't get the credit you guys deserve. And that's the whole purpose of these videos, is to shine a light on you guys, because, man, going in and fighting this guy, like some people did it about 6 times, and he's not holding back, like, I mean, to an extent, but it's still hurting. You know what I mean? So to have the balls to keep stepping up, Adam's 17 at the time. And Adam actually went and had to seek medical advice after this because of the kick at the end. And to Adam's credit, you know, he puts his hands up at the end of this, but this spinning kick, which got him, I think, in the sternum, like he's still got like a bit of swelling there to this day. So, you know, they're taking punishment too. When we first started doing this, we used to make the contestants also attack. Yeah, that kick, that hurt him, and they still got the damage today for it. So the contestants also attacked. So it was a really, really tough encounter. You know, they, like, when we finished doing it, like particularly the first time till we started putting stricter, I guess, safety policies in, they didn't have any padded protection. And we're using these whiteboard markers where the soft bit would disappear, and then they're hitting them with a hard plastic pen. And there's photos on my Facebook page somewhere where everyone's lifted their shirts up and there's bruises everywhere. So yeah, it's a tough little drill. It's a tough encounter. Without the attackers, these things never happen. You know, they deserve more credit than they get. I know, like I said before, it's like stormtroopers. People don't give a shit who they are. But yeah, I'm going to pause this here because this one has to be discussed. I'm sitting there in between Alex and Natan. It's almost like a tennis match where I'm looking from one side to the next, you know, because Alex respectfully is talking trash and trying to hype him up. And Natan, I'm just watching his face to see his reaction, and he wasn't happy. You know, he wasn't happy about it. And do you want to talk a little bit about that, Alex? Because like this to me was make or break of the show. This is the best moment, and I'd really like to see the additional footage, because this little dialogue went for like 3 minutes or something, where Alex is yelling and shouting and saying all this manner of things to Natan. I'm sitting there going, man, you're poking the bear. So Alex, why did you do it, you madman?
Oh, I remember in the morning, Natan walked in and he checked his phone, checked his heart rate monitor, and he just mentioned that it hadn't, you know, he's just stable and hasn't risen yet. I was like, oh, and that just made me think, oh, how can you, like, you know, make a UFC fighter kind of elevate his heart rate to a point where he'll feel like he's in a real fight with in the UFC cage or something. So I started as soon as he walked in, took his place in the shank tank. I thought I'll just start using one of his slogans, "Come see me, bro," and I'll just say, "I'm coming to see you, mate. I'll be there soon. You won't escape me." You know, just try and throw a bit of doubt or put stuff in his mind while he's having to deal with the other attackers prior to me. And then I got in there, and then we're just back and forth. And then, yeah, he acknowledged that we're going 100%, and I guess the rest is history there. It's just a good
Even when he's
time.
clocking you, even when he clocked you a few times, you're still talking trash. And I was looking at him and I'm thinking, he's not happy. Like I'm just sitting there thinking, shit, because like on the flip side, you know, I try and be hospitable to those, you know, to the contestants, you know, look after them as best. And I'm sitting there going, oh shit, is this? But, you know, it was done in a respectful manner. But I just, to me, I'm just sitting there going, fuck, he's going to be killed. And lucky this kick missed, because I think if this kick connected,
that would have
been picking up your head from the other room.
Yeah, that's it. But
and yeah, the run up the wall thing, I know Jesse said about it and was like, it was a bit controversial. Where did that come from?
just a good old movie Troy. Back in the day when I was young, I just thought I could wind up trying to beat Achilles and run up and jump and stab him in the neck. So I tried to do that with all of them. I think I got Natan, I also got Jesse, and yeah. So
yeah, and one thing I want to add to that is, like, it's funny, the attackers have free will. You know, people sit there and think that I go, you know, climb up in the ceiling, do this, do this, do that. I don't. You know, I leave it up to their judgment, especially my guys, because I know my guys are going to do the right thing and going to do something that's going to contribute to this series. and also the educational perspective of it. So I'm happy for them to go on their own and do that. I didn't know it was coming. You know, like some of the facials I pull while I'm sitting back there, I'm sitting there going, man, I look creepy. I'm just like, you know, I'm enjoying it, but I'm like, oh, you know, I'm going through the motions with it. It was just a cool moment. But this is, you know, one of the other arguments people make online is, you know, you got to have a grappling based, you know, you got to get a 2-on-1 to be effective. But since it's like season one and other things that we've been doing, I'm starting to again go back towards striking to some extent. And this is like this one, it's conclusive. There's no denying what happened here. And this just goes to show like the attackers, man, like this, he was lucky not to be hospitalized from that. Like he was down for about good 15 minutes. He was out for a couple of days. Like he's tough as anything, tough as nails, Aaron is. And he, you know, took it. The paramedic was, you know, looked at him and was like, you know, if you start pissing blood, we're going to take you straight to hospital. But he stayed there. He wanted to watch. Tough guy, you know, like most of my guys are, you know, stood there and accepted it. And that's the thing, you know, these things happen to the attackers and they're anonymous. And I don't want them to be anonymous. I want you to be celebrated for what you did because, man, you took one for the team. Like there's another spinning kick. Didn't connect as cleanly, but still going. Yeah, I can't stress enough. You guys make the series. And yeah, Natan did so well. But going back to the striking, you know, I talk about, you know, people say you got to control the weapon bearing limb or strike. You know, you got to be able to do all and you got to apply the right one in the right moment. You got to be an all rounder because each situation is different. Each scenario you'll find yourself in, there's so many variables that you can't account for them all. So you need to be good at all the above to be effective. There's not one way that works. And that's my advice for people. Get good at all of it. It's not an exact science. It's tough. Yeah. And like I was saying, all these courses out there who, you know, where we differ is we try and cover all ground. We've split it up to, you know, a knife attacker that's, I guess, not really determined. He's more defensive, as well as one that's really, you know, combative and coming forward. Like we've split it up and broken it down that different things apply to different circumstances. And it's a difficult thing to do. It's, you know, knife defense is the one that I don't think anyone has a very good answer to it. And particularly if you're not training at this intensity. So one other thing as well that we did years ago, our very first USDC, the one that we did in-house 12, I think it was about 12 years ago. We were at the basketball court at the time. We had like 6 events in the day. We had a weapon event, which was weapon versus weapon. So you would have a knife versus stick versus baseball bat, and you'd have all these rounds where, you know, we'd have in a I guess you'd draw out of a hat the weapon that you would use when you'd fight that particular person. So it'd be knife versus knife, could be stick versus stick, you know, any number of things. And we scrapped it because it was so inconclusive, the scoring, you know. So the scoring, people would argue and say, oh, I got that stab in. And they'd be like, no, but I hit you across the arms with my baseball bat first. You would have dropped it. It's just so inconclusive. It's so tough. And that's where the pen had that other element of complexity to it. And so again, the more complex it becomes, the harder it is to score and to get a black and white score. So apologies for anyone with upset and all the rest of it, but we're doing as best we can, and I think we're getting better at it, and I can already see how we can improve it for the future. So Jesse did quite well as well. Jesse's quite a good athlete, did really, really well. He used the pen here. Again, the pen is something like the knife, but to a lesser extent. And yeah, like you could dispute all these decisions, you know, pretty much. Like you could sit down and make a case for and against all of them. But what I focus on is the learning that's involved. So what you can learn from it. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And my advice that you hear in boxing and everything else, don't leave it to the judges. Because as you see, I'm human,
Yeah.
as is
So very
Rokas and
true.
everyone else who judged. So yeah. But yeah, we'll skip a little bit ahead. No, Jesse showed a wide array of techniques. My respect for karate has grown significantly after doing a lot of work with these guys and Seth. I think there's not a great deal of talking points in these exchanges, but like all of them, we could go through it. Craig, yeah, talking about his boxing fight, typical Craig fashion. Craig's done knife defense with us. You'll see that he's trying to gain control of the weapon-bearing limb. Adam's swapping it. A lot of people dispute the ability to swap under pressure. I'm not sure. I think it can be done. I think people can do it. But the thing about a knife attack, for myself personally, for me to have to stick a knife in someone, they had to have done something horrific. So my mental state in that situation is not that of a normal person. I'm aroused, heightened, and as we know, when you have that adrenaline and you're in that state of mind, your decision making is impaired. So that changes everything, and that's why I think people defending act the same way, and people attacking. If you look at the real knife attacks and things like that happen in prisons, it doesn't look like Filipino martial arts. There's a lot of call for you need a Filipino martial arts or a Salat master. It looks nothing like that. It looks nothing like the way the majority of the train. Not people like Dog Brothers, they do it really well, but nearly all the others I've seen don't do it justice. Craig had a good win there, isolated the arm. He was trying to do a lot of things that we sort of do. And you see that by this stage, he was exhausted. He's doing a lot of stuff, improvised weapons through the helmet at Jason in this instance. He's trying to control the arm as well as striking. So he's trying to put it all together. He ended in a really good spot there that, took the knife off you. Looks like he stabbed himself there, maybe. I don't know. But, he did quite well. He's considering he hasn't done any of this training in, it'd be 2 years. I'm happy and I'm pleased that he's retained it. He's retained some of the training that we do. So,
Speaking of the regular guy, Craig, a lot of people were saying, oh, you can't be regular and whatnot, but what's your take on it? Because my take is that, well, the last time I saw him train was 2 years ago prior to the season 2. And then he came in just to say hello on last Friday with 2 beers in his hands, drinking them. I wasn't training, so is he regularly? I reckon he is. Like he's been training or attending Western Combatives for what, 10, 12 years, but probably only trained 18 months really.
Yeah, he gets motivated and he comes out and he's training every day for 2 weeks, and then the lure of beer takes him away. And he's done that, but the knowledge and things, he's like a big advocate of it. So in that time, he'd be sending me videos and vice versa and various other things. So he kept up that, I guess, the awareness training and those kinds of things, it'd be fair to say. But yeah, he's not like these guys who that's all they do. Like Craig in the last 2 years has probably trained 10 times. So he's an average guy, from that perspective. He's a strong dude. He has the right mental outlook for fights. His head's in the right place for it. So, full credit to him. But I actually wanted him to be an attacker in season 1, but I can't remember the reasoning why he couldn't do that. But one thing he did, him and his wife Jen, I remember after we did the seminars, we went across to the shops at Cadden's and we got something to eat. And I came out to my car and someone drew a dick on my windscreen. And I found out later it was either Craig or his wife. So, so that's typically Craig. He's cool, trains hard, got the right mental outlook, and that goes a long way. Like that, I'm not saying you see red and you win. Absolutely not. You need skills to back it up as well. But the guy can go. The guy can fight. So just in conclusions, anything we missed, didn't cover, would like to say?
No, I mean, I just want to say that I respect all the competitors or contestants. It was great to meet them all. And I also respect all of my fellow attackers. I had a lot of fun. It was good fun, a learning experience. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. It's an educational learning experience.
Yeah, that's what I'm in it for. I don't give a shit about the clicks, the likes. People across the world can hate me and write what they want online. I don't care. It's about the education for me, for people who want to learn and actually give a shit about this stuff and want to get better at it and provide a better service. That's what it's about to me. The other stuff to me, incidentally, I don't care. it's about the learning. And, you know, if you learned something from it, I've done my job. Alex, have you got any final thoughts? Yeah, I just want to say, like, the competitors this season were awesome. Everyone were nice people. They're great guys. They brought a lot to the show. Grateful for them. Grateful for all they did. And yeah, I'm just glad that they participated. I'm glad the product is looking like it is, because, man, we put a lot of work into it. So thanks, guys, and really appreciate it.